Hey, welcome to Taylor's Trick Taking Table. I'm Table, and we love animals on the channel. We got lions, ducks, cows, oh my, and we even actually have two, yeah, count them, two salacious bee crumbs. Salacious's bee crumb, or salaci? Salaci? And I don't know if they're animals. I don't know if that's derogatory or mean. They laugh a lot in the movies. I think they, someone who is familiar with Star Wars lore and Salacious be Crumb lore. Someone who's familiar with the Crumb Cinematic Universe, the CCU, let me know if it was demeaning to call Salacious an animal. But Salacious is kind of, segue, like the animals in the game we're covering today. Savage Bull. This is a lizard. I think it's like lizards playing different variety of sports. You got baseball, football, I think rugby, soccer, who knows. But it's lizards in a championship bowl of some kind. And you will be playing in it. And in the first, so the hook of the game, it's a game where you want a specific number of tricks. So like at 5-player, you want 2 tricks exactly. But in the first 5 tricks of the hand, there's a referee who's making sure there's no roughhousing during the bowl game. And they will give a yellow card to the roughest player. The roughest player being whoever played the strongest card. So the player who played the strongest card in the first 5 tricks only, they will have to sit out of the next trick, and they don't win that trick either. So it's kind of like Schadenfreude where the second strongest wins, but just for the 5 tricks, because thematically I think the ref is like, I did my job and leaves. And then it's like normal. But anyway, so you're trying to hit a specific number of tricks. That is the conceit, and that might sound, if someone is familiar or if you've read the video tile, like another game, Hii-Fuu, or Hii-Fuu? In this one, you're trying to get 2 tricks, but as late as possible. And those both kind of sound like voodoo prints or marshmallow tests where you're trying to get 3 tricks as late as possible. So we're going to be talking about all of them. We'll do a kind of a quick overview of Hii-Fuu because Heavy Cardboard did a wonderful run through that I'll link down below. They did a great job of showing a little bit of the game, so I'll give kind of like a little bit of a teach on it. And then also, since it is just in June, I did want to say, on a little bit of a sad note, Big Cat Games, who we've shouted out, and they've been so wonderful. And if you've seen our Tokyo Game Market video, Ayako has been so helpful. And I got the Coast Dice from her and Big Cat Games when I was starting this crazy journey. So it is sad to see that they are closing shop, but I believe Ninja Star Games and Dan, another wonderful person, is taking up the mantle. And why I bring them up is because they were selling a Savage Bull trick-taking game. So if you like what you see at the end, I think they might have a way you can get it. I'll include links. Anyway, let's go to the table and I'll show you how to play. The deck in Savage Bowl is made up of 5 suits. The purple suit is trump, and the rest are just regular suits. The regular suits are numbered 1 through 13, and the purple trump suit is numbered 1 through 8. Here we have the game, I think, set up for 4 players, and I say I think, and you should take this entire rules explanation with a bit of a grain of salt, because these were the rules, and I translated them, I think, correctly. Not sure at all. So I probably might get a rule or 2 wrong. I'll put them in the comments below if I do. So here's roughly the setup for 4 players. If you're playing with 4 players instead of 5 players, you're going to remove all the cards that have the 5-player hand on it. So it's the 12 and 13 in the 4 normal suits. You're going to pick the correct side for this tracker here, this yellow card tracker. Again, if it's 4-player, you want the 4-player side, which just dictates, how many points you get per round and how many rounds there are. There's also these cards, which I'll explain in a little bit, but one has a 5 on both sides. You'll just remove it, and this one will have a 5 only on one side, and so you'll use that for a 4-player game. This is the score track. First to 10 or more points wins, or whoever has the most points at the end of the 4th round wins. These are the player score trackers. In 4 players, each player gets 13 tricks. In 5 players, everyone gets 12 tricks. And finally, you have this adorable little salamander token, which keeps track of the round we are on. With the setup out of the way, the goal of the game is to get a specific number of tricks, no more, no less. So in a 5-player game, you need to get 2 tricks exactly. In a 4-player game, you need to get 3 tricks exactly. No more, no less. So at this player count, if they were to get 4 or more tricks, or if they get 0 through 2 tricks, they get 0 points. But if you do get those 3 tricks exactly, you're going to get points per the round and possibly additional points, which I'll explain in a little bit. So the theme of Savage Bowl trick taking is players are these kind of lizards in this sport of Savage Bowl, and I think it's kind of like a football, lizard football. And part of the theme and why I can bring it up is because the game is broken up into 2 halves. And again, this is a translated theme, so bear with me. The first half of the game, there's going to be a ref who's going to be giving out a yellow card each trick. This is thematically for the player who was too rough in the trick. Gameplay-wise, it goes to the player who was the strongest. So they were too rough, they played the strongest, they get a yellow card. The yellow card means you don't win the trick. In fact, you were so rough, you have to, quote unquote, take a break. And you will not only not win the trick, you're going to sit out the next trick while the other players play. So let me show an example of one of those tricks. This yellow card kind of phase, this ref phase, only happens for the first 5 tricks. After that, as you can see, the second half of the game is just a normal trick taker where highest wins. But since the highest can't win in the first thing, the second highest will actually win. Kind of like Schadenfreude if you're familiar with that. So let's say the start player is this bottom left kind of dinosaur here. They can play whatever card they want into the trick. So let's say they lead with this 8 green. Savage Bowl is a must-follow trick-taking game, so looking through the next player's hand, they have to play green if they have one. Looks like they only have 1, so they are forced to play that 2 there. Let's say Clifford played a 4, so coming to the bottom right dinosaur, they have a 7, a 1, and a 5, which is very important for this specific trick, because if they play the 1, that means Clifford will actually take this trick. Again, players are trying to get 3 tricks exactly. If, however, they play the 5 or the 7, let's say they do that, they play the 5, they are actually going to take the trick. One of the 3 tricks that they're trying to get in the game. Like I said, the strongest player is going to get this yellow card here. The yellow card goes to the highest trump, and if there's no trump, it's the highest of the lead suits. It's bottom right player. The second highest is going to take the trick, so the dinosaur on the bottom right is going to take this trick. And while that's happening, the player who got yellow carded is actually going to have to discard a card from their hand over into this yellow card slot. So see how this happens for the first, second, third, fourth, 5th trick. They are going to look through the hand and they can pick whatever card they want. So maybe they pick that one, they put it face down into the yellow card. Then the rules say the player who has to sit out maybe puts their cards face down and puts the on break on top of them. So players know that player got out. So then the player who won the trick, the second strongest, who just took that trick, is going to lead to the next trick. So maybe they play a 2 blue. The player who has the yellow card is actually skipped for this trick. So it's actually going to skip the bottom left player here, the dinosaur, and it's going to come to the top left player here, the other dinosaur. And again, it's a must follow. So maybe they play that, and then Clifford finally looks like they're going to take the yellow card because they have to follow suit. And so this is going to keep happening. So Clifford now is going to be on break. They're going to pick any card they want, discard it. The winner of the trick's the second highest, so that's going to be this dinosaur here. Ooh, they're already getting a lot of tricks. They're going to capture it, lead to the next trick. This is going to kind of happen for the first 5 tricks. Just some examples of who would be second strongest. Say it was led with that red 11. Clifford follows suit, this was off suit, and this was off suit. So this would be the strongest, and it would get the yellow card, and then the 11 would be the second strongest and win the trick. If this wasn't here, and maybe it was off suit, again, there and there. If no one, oh, there, and then that would win the trick. If no one followed suit, like this, I think it's green who wins the trick, but I'm not 100% sure. I'll put it up there or in the comments down below because someone hopefully knows the rules better than I do. Jumping ahead, so the 5th trick just ended and the top left dinosaur did play the strongest, so they got kicked out. They discarded a card. Let's say Clifford won, so they'll lead to the next trick. After the 5th trick, so all the subsequent tricks, so 6th until either the 12th trick at 5 players or the 13th trick at 4 players, is going to be highest wins. I think the theme is the referee just decided to leave, so that's fun. Not 100% sure on that theme. Again, this was crazy translated. So now, instead of, Clifford getting a rough house yellow card, they actually just take the trick. And then this actually can just leave now, and everyone's in the game for the time being. So Clifford, actually, in this perfect example, just took this trick, and that was their 3rd trick. Let me slide down their wins here so you can kind of see it. When someone takes their first 3 tricks, they get this card. So as you can see here, it says first 3 tricks on the bottom. So this denotes who's the start player for the next round, but also, as you can see, boop, boop, boop. If that player doesn't get kicked out, they're going to get points for the current round total. I'll explain scoring in a little bit, but they're also going to get 2 bonus points. So it's called the Runaway King card. There are 2 of them at 5 player, but essentially this just kind of puts a little bit of a target on that person's head because if they survive, they're going to get 2 additional points. So Clifford will kind of just keep that in front of them. Let's say, sadly, that at the end of that trick, Clifford actually won it. Oh no, so Clifford took their 4th trick. Clifford is actually now out. there is kind of player elimination in the game. So Clifford will not participate in the rest of the tricks. They'll just sit there having kind of a sad time realizing that they took too many tricks, and the lead will just pass left to the next player. So then down here, this player would then lead. Jump forward to the end of scoring. Sadly, this top left dinosaur took a 4th trick at the very end there. Oh, so sad. And then down here, the bottom left dinosaur didn't take 3. They only took 2. So both Clifford and this bottom left, and the top left dinosaur, they all get 0 for the round. Only this bottom right, the Stegosaurus, I think, they're the only player that got 3 exactly in this example. So any player who got 3 exactly is going to get points per whatever round you're on. So in this first round, if you hit 3 exactly, you're only going to get 1 point. But as you can see, it kind of ramps up a little bit as you go on. So let's say it's green for their scale color. So they move up on that track. If Clifford hadn't have busted and had 3 tricks exactly and kept this, Clifford would have gone up 1 for the round and then 2 more for having the 2-point start player. Even though Clifford busts, they are going to lead to the next round at the start of the second round. So you're just going to clean this back up, slide this up, and players are going to play again. Again, you play until someone has 10 or more points, or at the end of the 4th round, whoever has the most points. There's also an expert variant that uses the chameleon cards, and I think I know how these work. Again, I'm not 100% sure. Check the comments for someone who is smarter than I am. So each player gets a chameleon card, in addition to all the cards that they normally get. And in a trick, you can, whenever you want, use a chameleon card, and what it does is it matches the suit of the previously played card. So you can't use a chameleon card when leading, so let's say it's Clifford's turn, they would just have to lead like a 10, but you can use a chameleon card whenever you want. So let's say Stegosaurus right here has this 11, and maybe they didn't have these cards, right? And so they were nervous, like, I don't want to win with this 11. So what you can do is, even if you could follow suit, I think, you can play whatever card you want, and then add a chameleon to it. It's like the 7 add a chameleon is now a 7 green. And there can be multiple chameleons into a trick. Like let's say this Triceratops didn't have green, so they offsuit the red. And then the top player up there, you know, they don't want to play one of their greens, or maybe they just want to get rid of a purple. They can play the trump, play the chameleon, and then again, it's also the suit of the previous. So this isn't green like this one was, it's actually red. And if chameleons go right after each other, it falls down the line. So this would be a green 5, funny enough. And that's how to maybe play Savage Bowl. The deck in Hii-Fuu is made up of some of my favorite trick-taking card art ever. I just absolutely love it. But it's 4 suits numbered 1 through 15. Here you have the game set up for 4 players. This is going to be a pretty brief overview. Again, I think Heavy Cardboard did a great playthrough if you want to see how that works. But the general gist of the game is players are going to be dealt 13 cards each. They're each going to have kind of meeples for the scoreboard, and then also this tracker here, which keeps track of when a player wins 2 tricks and when they fall down. Because the goal of the game is to get a specific number of tricks, and this one 2. And once you get 2, you come over to the scoreboard, boop, and then if you get 3 ever, you fall down. Ouch. But players initially start off the board, and actually we are going to start with this version here because I think that's the standard version. As part of setup, players are going to look through their 13 cards and they're going to pick any 4 to discard out of the game. It could be any of them that they want, high, low, they can short suit themselves. Maybe this player here, the double Squirtle, is going to pick these 4. So players are just going to all do that at the same time, and those cards are going to be out for this round. When the start player is going to lead to the trick, it is must follow. So if Squirtles play this silver suit, then everyone has to follow suit. The highest of the lead suit would win. There is no trump in the game. And then they would take one of the 2 tricks that they're hoping to take. So let's say the Thwomps win a trick. Maybe in the next round, they win another trick. They're going to take their person, because they were the first to win 2 tricks, and put them at the top of this board here. Let's say over the course of the game, Squirtle are the next to win 2 tricks. They're going to take them and put themselves on the next available slot. And the numbers to the top of the slot are how many points they're going to win if they don't get a 3rd trick. So maybe the frogs here, they get 2 tricks and they get 3 here. If, however, the Squirtles get a 3rd trick, oof, they will then fall flat and they get 0 points for that round. Then you play a certain number of rounds, or until I think someone gets 10 points, and whoever has the most points wins. So that is Savage Bowl and Hii-Fuu. Let's talk about Hii-Fuu first, because I think this almost is like a baseline of sorts for what Savage Bowl does, interestingly. So I think getting a specific number of tricks is always a fun idea, especially when all the players want that. You see that in Boast or Nothing. which hopefully we'll cover soon, and Voodoo Prince, which I absolutely adore. Kind of Marshmallow Test, if you've played that as well. But I think Hii-Fuu, as a conceit, the two twists are get two tricks, which is not terribly new, but also the fact that you can just discard a ton of cards in your hand before the trick. And also kind of the scoring, right? The scoring of later is stronger, kind of Voodoo Prince-ish, but also the variant scoring, where actually sometimes the third most is stronger than the second most, or like sometimes the first is the best to get. So it's kind of fun, varies it up per round, like what you want. So you see this a little bit later with Savage Bowl and how Savage Bowl handles kind of pushing players to get their specific number of tricks early, which is rad. But so, those conceits. Does Hii-Fuu do it well? I don't think too terribly well. I think Hii-Fuu is an interesting game, but I think a lot of it just comes down to luck and randomness, and I don't know how much control you really have, which, if you're in for that type of game, like kind of like Papayu, or just, those types of games where you're just throwing cards, probably not the worst. But personally, I always felt during the discard that sometimes you'll short suit, or sometimes you'll get rid of high cards and low cards, but everyone's kind of doing that, and you get to the point where if I short suit in a color, it's almost random that like another player is going to have that as like their last trick, because players balance each other pretty well. And so if I win the last trick, or if I bust near the end, I always just felt like it was just kind of like random. I could have discarded that card or another card, and it all kind of felt up in the air. It's tough when you have a lot of choice to what to discard, but then you don't really know if it matters at all. And also, like, it's tough to tell the players, like, if you're teaching this to a new player, like, hey, I know you don't know trick taking too well, but discard a lot of cards from your hand. And they're like, what do I discard? That being said, again, one of my favorite decks of all time. I think this is absolutely gorgeous. I love the graphic design. So cool. I love the different bubbles and all the different four suits. And the production is super fun. I love the kind of variable scoring. And in fact, I think I liked the game more when I played with someone else's variable scoring, where it was along these lines, right? Where a little bit more wacky, where it wasn't just like, take it later. Playing this just made me want to be playing Voodoo Prince, or Marshmallow Test, where in that game, it's way more balanced, and you feel like it was your fault for not going out, because it's like, you take 3 tricks and you're out, you score. As opposed to you take 3 tricks and you like lose, it feels a little punishing when you hadn't necessarily done something wrong. I never like that in games. That's like my one con of maybe Cat in the Box, is sometimes you'll cause the paradox when you don't do anything wrong. And I think that's kind of a feel bad for players. At least I feel bad for me. Conversely, Savage Bowl, I really like. Savage Bowl does a lot of stuff right. First off, learning this was maybe one of the hardest games I had to learn in a long time, just because it does the classic thing, which I think is great if you know the language, but Japanese rulebooks kind of super clarify. Maybe I just didn't understand it, but like examples where they talk about the scoring at the end, and they could have just said, you get a point per round, but they say things like, hey, go check this table to find out how many points you get, and they have this giant table that tells you like, okay, how many players do you have? What round are you in? That's how many points. And they could just be like, if you're in the first round, get 1 point. Second round, get 2 points. Things like that. But so, all that aside, I mean, it probably is so much easier to understand this game if you know the language. What clever twists on the idea of balancing a hand. The theme is crazy, and I love that. The retroactive theme kind of tries to explain that you're like the strongest actually sits out of the trick and gets like yellow carded. But essentially, in Hii-Fuu, if you have a really high hand, you mitigate that with a big discard. And like, yeah, that kind of works, but there's no trump, so sometimes you just get messed over by like discarding randomly a suit that is going to be led by someone who randomly is winning, and that just kind of feels like, how was I supposed to prepare for that? But in Savage Bowl, you're cultivating your hand as you go, which I think is huge. It's almost like bidding at the start of a hand versus bidding as you go. Like, I love bidding as you go because it gives players like a little bit more information of like, ooh, am I actually doing way better than I would have expected? As opposed to bidding at the start of a hand, you're like, I think this is it, and then you're kind of like sometimes really wrong. This was cultivating your hand as you go. And a lot of times it's nice to be dealt a high hand and be like, you know what? I can just win a lot early and then I don't take any tricks. And in fact, it's like a double mitigation, right? because you win the trick with a high card, so then you can waste that high card and you don't actually take a trick with it. And then you get to discard a card, so you get to discard another high card. So the double mitigation is really, really cool in the game. And it has trump, so I like that as well. I also personally played with the chameleon cards, which add a really fun level of depth and strategy if we're playing them correctly. Hope I was playing them correctly. But it adds that moment to where, even though you can play them whenever, you're still limited by what someone plays before you. And so that's often, you know, following suit, especially the second player. So the chameleon isn't like too overly strong, and it is kind of like a nice tool in your kit to hold on to. It almost feels like the scout and play in Scout, like you have this kind of once per hand trick up your sleeve that gives players a really fun level of agency. I love the cards that tell players not only start player for the next round, which is like a fun, nice little quality of life touch, but also giving up bonus points for if you get a specific number of tricks early. I love that. Incentivize someone not only to rush to get those tricks, maybe earlier than they wanted to, right? And put a target on their head. What a double whammy. But it's worth points. And, you know, usually games like Anansi that have it to where the later round is actually worth more points. That's kind of a pet peeve of mine, where it's like, oh, I did well in the first 2 rounds. Like, I beat someone in the first 2 rounds, and then they just win the 3rd round, and then we're tied. It's like, okay, like nothing changed. Savage Bowl. What it does so well is, even though it does have the ramp scoring, and overall, again, it's not terribly my favorite, but I do like that in the early rounds, when getting a specific number of tricks is only worth, you know, 1 point or 2 points, you can go for these. You can be more aggressive for these, because these are consistent. So why not get the first 3 tricks and try to score 2 plus 1? So if you get it, you're only out 1 point, but you might get 3. So I love that the ramped up scoring does feel a little bit different. And it makes it so it's like not really a pet peeve of mine in a game. What a nice little twist. Like, this static scoring incentive just fixed something that I kind of don't like in trick-taking games that do that. So really great. It's a funny teach. There's a lot of like, this is wacky, get ready. Especially the first half of the game, second half of the game, yellow card, sitting out. When I taught it, people were like, oh, it's like Schadenfreude where your second wins. And it's like, well, and then you go off into the next thing, and then it's like, oh, so it's like boast or nothing because you're trying to get a certain amount of tricks, or Hii-Fuu. And I'm like, yeah, kind of. So, and then like, you have the chameleon cards. So there's like a lot that this game uses other elements that work so well in other trick takers, but it does so in a nice package that's really, I think, pretty, a fun theme, and yeah, I really, really like it. The only reason I'm a little bit hesitant to recommend it is because the player elimination is kind of like a feels bad moment, and that's the only tough part, is when someone gets 3 tricks pretty early and they sit out for 6 tricks, 5 tricks or something. And I know it's like, come on, Taylor, like that's not that long to sit out for. But it is a little feel bad, especially in the end. And it can get to a point where I think I've just noticed anytime I feel bad for making the correct play in a game, that like hurts the game to me. Like, there was a moment where someone that just got 2 tricks early, this was like in a 5-player game, and it was the right decision of me to give them another trick really early. Like, they did it super, super early. I was like, this is just the right thing to do. And maybe this is, maybe I was impersonating Rada for too long. I'm getting a little Care Bear. But I never like when the game's like, make someone sit out and that is the right thing to do. That always just feels like a little, So if that doesn't bother you, woo! And everything else sounded good to you, I think this is a solid game for you. That's just the only reason I think it stops a little bit short to me, is that player elimination is sometimes a little bit of an oofta. Oh my gosh, it's like Fool as well, or Foppin. I forgot to talk about that. The fact that you sit out a round makes it so at 5-player, then there's only 4 people in the trick, or at 4 people there's only 3. So it's nice. It's a really fluid system where, you know, higher player count games, it's like 4 and 5, they feel like a 3 and 4. So it's actually a little bit zippy. So there I am arguing against myself again for that player elimination point. But anyway, really fun game, lovely theme, great art, crazy art. Kind of reminds me of Battle Ball. But yes, so that is Hii-Fuu, and Savage Bowl trick-taking game. Again, maybe check out Dan, Ninja Star. I know that Ayako from Big Cat Games was selling this, but then kind of, I think, gave it to Dan. Not 100% sure. Definitely check it out. I'll put some links if that is true. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope y'all get a chance to play. Bye!